Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to Practically Tactical, the show where we add critical thinking to your everyday carry. So, in tonight's show, we're going to be doing the next step from our show last week that featured a panel of concealed carry instructors from around the Midwest, talking about the challenges facing a lot of the frontline instructors out there who are instructing beginners. Well, tonight we have Kim and David Davidson here from Central Illinois. And they're going to be talking about their experiences taking their first class. So it's going to be a really, really interesting show. Guys, if you have any comments or questions or anything, go ahead and post it up on the YouTube comments. We'll see them here, and we can follow up on those questions there. But before we get into all that, I want to thank you guys, our amazing Patreon supporters, for your awesome support. Really, guys, we can't do this without you, so we can't thank you enough. We're building a community as part of Practically Tactical, so get involved in the Signal group, the Patreon Facebook group, and wherever else you can. So then, of course, we want to thank our amazing sponsors: Filster Holsters, Defense Mechanisms, Big Tex Ordnance, Defensive Elements, Phoenix Ammo, and Cloud Defensive. You can go to our website and find links to all of our sponsors, as well as discount codes and all that good stuff. While you're on our website, please be sure to do all of your Amazon shopping with our Amazon affiliate link by clicking on the Amazon banner at the bottom of the page. All right, so we got all that stuff out of the way now. Heath, how you doing, buddy?
Living the dream.
Awesome. That's like the classic line that Heath has to repeat, and if we don't get that right, nothing else in the show is going to go right. So, but good to see you. Everything going all right? Have a busy weekend?
Yeah, it was a good time, man. Got to go spend some time out with Nick Saturday, doing some working on my own stuff, and went out Sunday teaching. So awesome. It was a good weekend.
Awesome. Well, on the guest of our show tonight, Kim, David Davidson. Guys, go ahead and introduce yourselves. Tell us a little bit about yourselves, where you grew up, where you're from, your entire life story, whatever you got. So, tell us a little bit about yourselves, and maybe, did you grow up around guns, or is this all new for you?
Go ahead.
I grew up around guns. There was a loaded gun in every room of the house growing up. We were taught, just don't touch it, don't even look at it. And guns were something for men. As a girl growing up in the South, that just wasn't encouraged. And so I grew up around guns, yes, hearing them be shot, seeing them be shot, but never being a part of the action. That was considered unladylike.
Yeah. So same for me, right? So we both grew up in South Georgia. So we're kind of the good old, around the good old boy redneck, society. I grew up, primarily in a hunting household. My family are, mainly hunters. My dad's, hunter, my granddad's, everybody. So we grew up around guns, but for the purpose of hunting, right? It really wasn't for sport. We didn't do a whole lot of, I guess, shooting, trap or, clay pigeons or whatever. That kind of came along later for fun, right? I started doing that more when I got out of college and got my first job. But so I really didn't buy guns for fun, right? It was more of a just hunting, and, maybe we had, I guess my dad, he probably had, back in the day, right? It was all revolvers. It was 357s and 38s. And so we had those for home defense, but we didn't shoot them for fun, right? That just wasn't something you did that much. I remember I had a 22 growing up, and that was kind of my first gun, just like it is every kids, in the South, man, you grew up with a 22. We did. I guess I did shoot that a little bit for fun, but that was kind of few and far between, right? It was just kind of the introductory gun to a 30-06 or a 410 or whatever it is you're going to grow up with. I think I eventually got a 16 gauge, but like I said, it was, and then I think I got a 12 gauge eventually, but that was all bird hunting, right? That was for dove. That was kind of, I like to hunt dove, but that's kind of what we did in the South. It was quail, dove, or deer, right? That was kind of the three. And then, duck hunting got, more popular as I got a little older. So I didn't do that much duck, but and still today. I mean, we go back to South Georgia. It's, man, hunting is, that's the name of the game. Everybody wears camo and everybody has jacked up 4-wheel drives.
Plantations, as far as the eye can see, hunting plantations. We were
Yeah.
actually married at a hunting plantation.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So now for, obviously you guys, you live in Central Illinois right now, but you're from originally the South Georgia area.
Mhm.
But you guys have traveled all over the United States, so kind of, we talked about it a little bit before the show, but kind of give us a roadmap, crisscrossing across the United States of where you guys have lived.
Yeah, so we luckily we dated all through high school, both graduated, went to college together. So then we moved to Statesboro, Georgia, which, if you ever heard of Statesboro Blues, Allman Brothers, that's the song there. But that was over on the East Coast by Savannah, Georgia. I went to college there. We ended up moving to Atlanta, Georgia. I had a job lined up there, so we lived in Atlanta for roughly 11 years. I went to work for Cat right there at the end. Caterpillar moved us from Atlanta to Colorado, so we lived in Denver for 3 years. Then we moved. Then Cat moved us moved us to Charlotte, North Carolina. So lived there for a year, and then Caterpillar did some reorganization and ended up moving us to Dallas, Texas. So we lived there for 3 years, and then moved again now we're back in Peoria at the primary headquarters for Caterpillar for the most part. So yeah, I think we've seen it. Even the neighbors, right, that we've been around, like how they think about guns, right, and it's totally different from state to state. We've been pretty exposed to some different thoughts. People are scared to death of guns, and other people are comfortable with them, right? So that was kind of the, pretty, I'd say, big wide difference, of how people feel across the country about guns.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting, because I mean, around here, you get much outside the city and everybody's got a gun. I mean, everybody goes hunting, and it's the same type of thing. Everybody goes deer hunting. Duck hunting is really popular, all that kind of stuff. So, you go much outside the city, and again, everybody's wearing camo.
Right.
You have your Sunday church camo and then your everyday camo, depending on where you're at. But, you wear camo inside the city and people kind of look at you a little funny. So it's really, really interesting, that there are a lot of regional differences, both on the urban sense and on the rural sense on thoughts and feelings on firearms. But who initially taught you how to shoot? David, you were talking about, you had a 22, and you went hunting a lot with your dad and grandpa. Yeah. Did they kind of primarily teach you how to shoot, or have you had any other formal instruction, anything like that?
No, yeah, it was primarily my dad. Yeah, he taught me, from an early age. I mean, I guess I did have a BB gun, right? But and he taught me, the fundamentals there, right? Just to be careful. And then the 22, and then I took the hunter safety course, when I was probably 13 or 14, I guess. Before he would really let me start hunting, right? We had to take that in Georgia, so and that was good. It was valuable. I still remember some of just the basic, principles of the hunter safety course, right? And most guys that I talk to, everybody remembers kind of just the basic how to carry a gun. I mean, just simple stuff like that, right? So, that's how I learned.
Kim, same question to you. Who had taught you how to shoot guns?
You did.
Oh,
yeah. Seriously, had never. Like I said, I've seen them. Had never held one in my hand. David tried to teach me once. There was a 6-month spread where he had to work in another state. And so I was left to defend the home and the kids and everything by myself. And he said, I just want you to know how to use it. And I said, but I just want plausible deniability. I want to know that I don't know how to use it. So, I'd never even touched one until January of this year.
Okay. Awesome. And any, I guess, thoughts or feelings, had you done mostly, David, you've shot mostly like rifles and shotguns, not so much on the pistol work?
Yeah, well, I guess when I went, when I finally, moved out, got out of college, and Kim and I got married. I did purchase a 9mm just for safety. But I had a good friend of mine who worked for the GBI, so the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, right? So we were good friends, and we actually would go to the shooting range because he loved to shoot. So I would take my 9. And he actually he taught me that's how I kind of knew what I knew, was just really loosely based on what he showed me how to shoot in the range. Just being able to double up on the gun. I didn't know that was a real thing, right? Until he showed me. But yeah, and that helped out a lot. So that's kind of how I became or got familiar with shooting. I would say a safe way to shoot, right? Pistols. But I mean, I think I've shot maybe 38s in the past, but no real formal training or anything like that.
Sure.
His stepdad and my dad both have semi-automatics. Is that what you would call them? The ARs and the is that a semi-automatic? Is that what that's called?
Yeah, semi-automatic rifle.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the granddads would take out. We have 2 sons, so they'd take out the sons and let them, shoot at randomness. So you've been around those as well as pistols,
Well, he was asking pistols. I have ARs and I've shot them, but he was asking pistols.
Okay.
So it's fair to say, David, you've had lots of experience with lots of different firearms. Not pistols weren't really a focus, but more it's there if you need it type of thing.
Correct.
Kim never probably touched a gun, but never really shot a gun, never touched a gun, never even touched a gun.
Nope. It was in a case, so I touched the case.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's a big step going from being able to touch the case to shooting.
I mean, you're not a debutante if you touch a gun, apparently. So
not even a little Derringer in a little, thigh holster or anything like that. I thought that was like
carried one around on her hip, which is probably part of the reason why they didn't let me even touch one. But they were scared I'd turn out like her. But that just wasn't part of how I grew up.
Well, one of the things that we talk a lot about when it comes to firearms, I mean, we talk about firearm safety, and there's the 4 firearm safety rules that everybody can repeat. That's usually the first thing that you're taught. We've been really playing around with the idea of changing that paradigm from safety to responsibility. That in every state, a pistol or a firearm is considered a deadly weapon. So it's really difficult to be able to treat a deadly weapon safely, but you can treat it responsibly. Does that make sense? So it's the idea, and it's like our tagline is responsibly armed citizens, and creating that. So, growing up, what were your attitudes towards, gun safety, gun responsibility, that sort of thing? I mean, David, you mentioned, or one of you mentioned, maybe it was both of you, that you had guns in every room and it was just don't touch them. Talk a little bit about, your attitudes growing up and here recently with firearms, firearm responsibility and firearm safety.
We're proud to endorse the Second Amendment. I mean, we've been members of the NRA and happily, happy to endorse that type of patriotism. And, I think a healthy fear is what we've tried to instill in our children. That's what was instilled in me. Just a healthy respect and fear of what, this piece of equipment can do. I love the paradigm switch of responsible versus safely. That's huge. That I think it's such a small, it's not just a semantic change. It would be an entire paradigm change. I really like that. But yeah.
No, I'd agree. I'd say growing up, right, it was, like I said, it wasn't a toy, like, guns in general, right? And Kim and I probably both, we grew up in a time when, parents used the belt, right? They put the fear of God in you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Right. And so you were, if you were told they're off limits, right, as a kid, then they were literally off limits, right? You really just wasn't worth the beating, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To go play with, with guns. So yeah, we kind of grew up with that mindset, right? That it's not a toy, and that it's actually something you use to hunt. And I guess there's enough, even with my parents, I'm sure your parents, they've known enough people over time that have gotten shot and died, right? And they explain that to you, right? Something that, you chances are you're not going to live through it. So you have to be responsible. So I think we kind of grew up with a little bit of fear, but that's same, a different, another level of responsibility that you kind of carry, when you have a gun, right? And
Yeah.
I say, so growing up with that, we probably look at guns a little different, right? We're not scared of them. We've kind of done the same with our kids, right? I've showed my kids, every gun we have in the house, right? I show them how to break it down. I show them how to clean it, right? We've taken them and shot, and they're aware, but they also know they're off limits, right? As a kid, and if they touch them, they've got to deal with me, right? I mean, there's another level there, and they have totally stood by it. I bought them little, 22 replica, ARs, right? Little Smith and Wessons, and we shoot those, for fun when we go down to Georgia, because all of our parents live on, kind of pseudo farms, right? Big, a lot of property. So there's a healthy, I guess, relationship with guns, right? We don't fear them, but we do respect them.
So, quick question on that. So, how old are you guys as kids?
17 and 14.
Okay. So what about what age did you start actually taking them out to shoot and exposing them to it?
So I was introduced to a group of mothers right before I started having children that believed that there should not be guns in the home. The home should be this safe place, a safe haven. Now, I don't know how they were planning on making it safe, but a safe haven with no guns. So I said to David, it was the trend, the thing to do is, okay, we're not going to buy the boys guns as toys, because I don't ever, heaven forbid, the cautionary tale I was told. My mom was a counselor for the probation office. So she dealt with probation officers all day long, armed. And she would tell me cautionary tales of, how they've had mishaps and lost young children due to, haphazardly laying their weapon down or, something like this. So I was scared to death of having guns. Even the thought of a Nerf gun in the house was scary for me, because I thought, oh my gosh, if they think it's a toy and they come upon, one of our guns, then they're going to, aim it at each other. So, that worked for like the first 3 years of their life. And then
3, huh?
Yeah, for the first 3 years. And we had these Lego sets. And what I found was, okay, they weren't provided guns, so they created guns with their Legos. And so they would mold them out of Legos, or they would mold them out of sticks and rubber bands. And I'm like, good grief, what's the point in trying to keep them away from guns if they're just going to create them themselves? Maybe we need to set the narrative. So maybe we need to introduce them to toys that are guns, but at the same time, teach them that there are guns that are not toys, and teach them the difference. And that's, I think they're almost 18 with all their appendages. I hope that's what we've done.
Yeah.
I really like that. You set the narrative for the kids that, this is what a firearm is. It's a tool. It's not a toy. I think that's really, really smart. And that, with my family, I've done the same thing with my girls, teaching them it's a tool and it's not a toy. And it's not a forbidden fruit for them. If they want to, hold one of my guns, we unload it, we show them how to unload it and all that kind of stuff, and show them how to safely handle it, or responsibly handle it. I gotta keep that switch in my mind as well. But I think that's really key. Heath, what do you have on that?
Yeah. And so for me, it sounds like my childhood experience was very similar to both of you guys with that, is because for me, that's how it was. There were loaded guns laying all over the place, and it was, you just don't touch them. But my dad would say, if you want to see them, let me know.
That's right.
I'll unload it. we'll make sure it's empty, and you're welcome to check out whatever you want to. So, and growing up for me, that worked out really well. So that was kind of how I looked at it as a parent myself. And the big thing that I did was I started taking them out shooting with me when they were about 2 or 3 years old. They weren't shooting, but I wanted them to be exposed to the bang, see it, it would be like, hey, you know what? I'm going to take the kids out. Let's go shoot pumpkins. So they see things kind of like poof, and to kind of show them that there was a scary variation from mine to their toy guns, just to kind of make sure I separated that barrier, because to me, you always seem to hear those stories of the parent that had a gun, kept it in their closet, nobody knew it was even in the house, and a kid finds it, and all of a sudden they shoot their best friend or their sister, brother, fill in the blank. So, to me, I think exposure is the best direction with that. And I understand people wanting to keep everybody safe, but that seems, my kids have all been pretty positive experiences so far. However, unlike you, my daughter is the one who loves to shoot. Like I always joke with her, and so I've got 2 boys. My middle kid is my daughter, and I always joke around I make sure the boys are in the room, and I tell her, "Oh, you're my favorite son."
Yeah.
David, did you have anything on that, or?
Oh yeah, I was just going back. I mean, we did the same, right? We introduced the boys to BB guns first, right? I think I bought them Red Ryder BB guns for Christmas when they were maybe 6 and 8 or something like that, right?
We watched the Christmas Story.
Yeah, Christmas Story. They kind of, they thought that was awesome, and so we got. And I think that was actually my first gun that I think back was a Red Ryder BB gun, right? It was. Yes, I've still got my original. Right now they've got their 2 new ones, or not new now, but. Yeah, I mean, we taught them the right way, right? We wore safety glasses, took them out to shoot, because I'm sure, like everybody, I've shot BBs and they've come right back and pegged me.
You
right?
still have one in your head, right?
No, well, as growing up in the South, right? We would play war in the woods growing up, and we would play war with BB guns, and we would shoot each other, right? That's not very smart. I probably shouldn't bring it up here, but it was a dummy. Now my parents didn't know anything about it, right? If they had have known, they'd have killed me. But I did get shot in the head. I had to go to the hospital, and then wedge a BB out of my skin on my head.
I actually had one similar to that too. Me and a buddy were probably 15 or 16 years old, and we're like wrestling around over the thing, and he pulls the trigger and shot me right here in the head, and I still have a dent. And my parents never found out. I took a towel, wadded it up, stuck it on my head, and I wore a hat for like 3 weeks. And I let my hair grow out to cover it until the scar healed.
I'm calling your parents right after the show.
Oh, man.
Well, your first class that you took was the Illinois State concealed carry class, which is a 16-hour 2-day class. What was your main motivation for taking that class? I mean, why did you sign up and decide, yep, we want to spend a weekend learning about guns and how to handle guns and shoot guns and all that stuff?
Yeah, thinking back, right, all the traveling we've done, all the sketchy places we've ever been, right? I mean, dude, I've gotten trapped in some really bad parts of town, and really been like worried. And so it's always been in the back of my mind, right? It's something I knew I wanted to do. Like I've always, probably shouldn't say it, but on long trips, we would take a handgun. We'd pack it, in the back, right? But I knew I shouldn't, but I did it anyway. If it comes down to it, right? You want to be able to defend yourself. Now, it was all the way in the back under luggage and stuff. I don't know if I ever would have got to it in time, but I always felt better about it. and just having it. Now, you of course had the lock case and everything, but yeah, the idea of just like, hey, I can't be chancing, by taking the chance when I know better, right? And it's as simple as taking a class, right? And filling out the paperwork and getting your license, and that way you're covered, right? You're legal. So it's something we should have done years ago. We just busy, right, as parents, and you look at doing it, and then you get caught up with something else. So finally, I hate to admit it, but the COVID, just being at home and able to not travel, options are limited. So it actually just kind of worked out perfect where we had time. Like, hey, let's set this thing up, and luckily, Kim, knowing your family, that worked out perfect, right? Where we could set something up. So yeah, it was something we wanted to do the whole time. Just lots of excuses why we didn't, but we knew it was the right thing to do. So I'm thrilled that we did it, because it was a phenomenal class.
I did not want to. I did not want to take the class, but he had been just saying it over and over and over for years. I want you to learn how to shoot. I want you to learn how to shoot. I need you to know how to defend the family if I'm not here. And I finally talked to a girlfriend, and she says, "Yeah, my husband does that." And I thought, okay. So we made it happen. I'm so happy we did.
So, David, it sounds like you were self-motivated, that you recognize that you wanted to take the class. Kim, it's a little bit like you were drug in, kicking and screaming a little bit.
Yeah.
What was the final, I guess the final straw that made you think, okay, fine, I'll sit here, I'll listen, I'll take the class. Was there one thing that kind of convinced you one way or the other?
I don't think I had a choice. We were hosting it.
No, she was curious. Don't let her fool you. I mean,
I was curious. It was I almost felt rebellious taking it, because it was not something that I would have. When I told my daddy that that's what we were doing this weekend, he was like, "You're doing what?" "Well, you're not going to shoot, right?" And it was like, well, I think I kind of have to pass the course. But yeah, it was still very hesitant, like, that's not something that, you should be doing as a lady. That's not something, it's not very ladylike. He was completely fine with David taking the class, just not me being a part of it.
And that's funny because, with Heath and I, both of our wives train with us, and they're an active part of our training. And it may not be ladylike, but if I can admit this, it's sexy as hell to watch my wife shoot. I'm just gonna throw that out there. It's kind of interesting with Illinois. The fact that we have a 16-hour class that you have to pass in order to exercise your right to carry a firearm. We really applaud a lot of these states that are going to a constitutional carry where you don't have to have any restrictions on your right to carry. And we believe very strongly in that. We also, to that extent, believe highly in the responsibility aspect of it as well, that you take some sort of formalized training in order to be able to carry a firearm safely or responsibly is the word that we're looking for there. So I guess, it's Heath. What do you have on that?
Yeah, to me, it's like anything that the government gets involved in, it turns into a nightmare. They focus on the wrong things. Now, so to keep them out of it as best as possible would be the positive, right? But at the same time, trying to inspire people to pursue training on their own is one of those things that, as a community, I think we need to almost shame people into for not doing it. And that's not sure that everybody's on board to do things safely and responsibly. It's not like, not saying call people names and stuff, but at the same time, push people. I'm always pushing people that I know to seek out training, even if they don't have a concealed carry or whatever the case may be, just out of their own, you own firearms, you have kids in your home. Like, don't you think that spending this time is a worthwhile thing? Right. So, on that, I'm curious what you guys' take is with it.
Because you've lived in states that didn't require it, and you've lived in states that do require it. So, I guess what are your thoughts on that as a whole?
That's a great question, because I would say I'm an advocate of the training. Right, the world's full of knuckleheads, right? And if if you just open it up, you know what you're going to run into, right? And it's going to be bad for all of us. So I think there has to be some level of training. I think one of the funny things, we lived in Dallas, Texas. We had a guy that moved in down the street. He was from Italy, and just great overall great guy. But he went to Walmart, one day, and he came back, and he's like, we saw him out in the street talking to him. He's like, you literally can just walk up and buy a gun, right? Like, he was so just like he couldn't believe it. Like, he'd lived in California, or Italy to California to Texas, and he was just shocked, that it was like, you want it here, here's the price. And he just couldn't believe it. But, so he grew up in a culture, especially in Europe, right, where that's way different, and then California, not much different, I guess. But, in seeing his thoughts, but, there's some truth to that. Like, there's a lot of knuckleheads out there, right? And, I know everybody's got their, their thoughts on it, but I think there should be definitely some level of training, to at least carry a handgun. I think it's appropriate.
But I think the distinction is between what's required and what is enforced or self-imposed. Not to talk politics by any stretch of the imagination, but I do believe in the least amount of government possible. And my government requiring it, you have to jump through this hoop before you can have this right. I've not done anything to have that right taken away, so why am I having to jump through this hoop? So, but I think that goes back to the breakdown of family units. That it's your family, as head of our family, David is responsible for making sure that we are all equipped to handle our rights that have been endowed to us by our Creator and our Constitution. So I feel like it, as a culture, if we support the training and support the advocacy for our families and our church families and our biological families, that there won't be a need for the enforcement from an outside entity.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with that. I really like the states that are going to the constitutional carry, and I wish there wasn't a requirement for it. That being said, I would still teach the same class that I teach, and I would encourage people to get more education. I mean, I don't think being more educated on a topic can hurt you at all. It's only adding luck to your favor. It's, if you want to put it that way. There's one of the guys on this show, Jeff, has said that there's trained and untrained is a liability. So we always really encourage people to get training. But even that being said, the vast majority of self-defense situations are where people successfully defend themselves with a firearm is done by untrained people. So just statistically speaking, do you need training to successfully defend yourself? No. But again, I think it adds a lot more luck to your favor, and puts the odds in your favor, and may the odds be ever in your favor. Yeah. But looking at the class, what expectations did you have for taking a firearms training course? Was it something that you were expecting something more militaristic? Were you expecting, conversation? I guess, what were your expectations going into the class? And feel free to be completely honest, ignore that I was your instructor and all that. So
No, I thought going into it, right, my exposure, of course, was the hunter safety course, which is do this, don't do that, right? Very laid out, structured, very, here's pictures and here's, I guess, and I kind of work in an environment where we have to do mining, health and safety, right? So we have to always take this MSHA training. I'm sure people take OSHA, MSHA, training. So I was kind of thinking, all right, here I go. I got a couple of days of sit down, go through the PowerPoints, right? Got pictures. That's what I was envisioning, right? To be honest with you, just coming in green, didn't have any, expectations other than what I've seen in the past.
Sure. Kim, what were your thoughts? What were your expectations?
I had no basis of comparison. I had no expectation. I was really just more worried about what hors d'oeuvres or little snacks I would have for everybody. That's where my head was at. I was not thinking like, what's this going to be like? I was just like, oh, is the house clean? Do I have some sweet tea out for everybody?
And then I was the heretic that asked for unsweet tea.
Yes.
I know that's, Kim, what I thought was really interesting is when you came to sit down, we started having the conversation and started going through the course material. You sat down with knitting or crochet or
crocheting.
Crochet.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have ADHD, and in order to listen, my hands have to be busy. So yeah, I'm fidgeting under the camera here.
The interesting thing is, though, I don't remember you doing a whole lot of crocheting through the presentation.
No, it was so, I had all intentions of working on my crochet material, but I found that it was so engaging that I did not, I wasn't even thinking about the crochet. I just wanted to soak up every ounce of information. Once the training began, I thought, this is such vital information. This is such, so important that I pay attention, that I was able to hyper focus right in on what you were saying.
So what were some of the topics that you thought we were going to be covering? Like, again, before you get into the class, you're sitting down there with your notepad. You're like, okay, what are we going to be talking about? What's he going to say?
Honestly, I was thinking like we would start with, this is a handgun. This is what a shotgun looks like. This is what a semi-automatic looks like. This is what an automatic like. And here's the differences. Now, these manufacturers make this type of gun. These manufacturers make this type of gun. Like I thought it would be more elementary.
More technical in nature? Like
much more simplistic in nature. And we jumped in, and I thought, okay, there is a certain level of cultural literacy that I need to get up to speed on really quick. And so I did, and just listening and absorbing, asked a lot of questions. But yeah, I thought it was great.
Though it's funny you say that. That was one of the things that my wife, because she took her concealed carry with Kevin too, and so she had met Kevin a couple of times prior because of me and Kevin training together and going out. And I know a couple of guys in my local area that teach it. She said, no, when I get my course, I want it to be with Kevin because I trust him. And I sat through Kevin's class and I went, wow, he takes the most boring material in the world and made it interesting to where even I was like, wow, I could sit through this without a problem. Because when I took it, I was trying not to fall asleep. And it was not through Kevin. It was through a place local to me. But yeah, that was one of the things that she said was, oh man, now I have to learn what all this stuff actually means. And I told her, I said, I've been talking to you about this stuff for like the last 10 to 12 years.
Right.
And she's like, yeah, I wasn't really listening.
Yeah.
My wife talks to me constantly about homeschool curriculum, and I have to admit, I still don't know half of what she's telling me. I mean, I revealed this on the couple show that we did, that, as passionate as I am about firearms and training, she's equally as passionate about homeschooling curriculum. And so we try and share each other, but we're no more experts in each other's passions than, it's just an interesting, it's an interesting dynamic. But, you talked earlier about friends and neighbors having different attitudes when it comes to firearms. Have any of your friends done any training or anything like that? Or have you heard stories about training? Or were most of your friends very much, not in the gun culture, not a fan of firearms or anything like that?
Yeah, I can't think of a single neighbor that we've had that we've moved to, other than living here in Peoria, and our neighbor across the street, David Lang, who also took the class. He's a gun guy, right? And he's from Pittsburgh, PA, right? But he grew up around guns. His dad had guns, and they were hunters, and he's always been around it. But even past that, I think we've got. But yeah, I would say Colorado, absolutely not. Well, no, I take it back. We did have one neighbor.
We had a fanatic.
One fanatic. Yeah, you're right. My bad. I forgot about
it. He was a fanatic with guns and light bulbs for some reason, but he didn't do any training. I mean,
no, he did. He rode with police. He did.
Yes, he did.
He was.
Let's not say his name.
He was hardcore. Actually, a great guy. I mean, honestly, dude, if the shit went down, he would be the guy, right? I'm like, he's coming out of the house looking like Chuck Norris, right?
Yeah.
So what makes a fanatic in your mind? And again, I want your perspective as somebody who's not necessarily in the training community, but when you hear of a gun nut or a fanatic, what does that mean to you?
Well, after a night out on New Year's Eve, we had a wonderful night of dancing and celebratory dinner and
a lot of booze.
Yeah. lot of booze.
Getting a little lubricated with booze.
Yeah, we got a ride home. But sadly, we live right next door to this guy, so he thought that is the opportunity. That is the perfect timing that we should come over and look at said guns. As he's slurring his words.
It was probably one of our first times actually being able to sit down and talk. And then he realized I'm a gun guy too, and it was okay. You know what I mean? Then I think he was so excited just to show off his collection
because he was such an isolated guy in Colorado, because we had neighbors on the other side who the fact that we had guns in the house, they didn't want their children coming in to play with our children because there were guns in the house. And I had to explain, no, that's not going to happen. That there's not going to be any mishap because we've taken those precautions. That's just not. And just sharing that culture with them.
So, out of curiosity, what state was it where you had neighbors that were, nope, you got guns in the house, don't want to be?
Colorado.
Yeah.
Oh, that was Colorado too?
Yeah, okay. Definitely Colorado.
No, we were in a suburb, right? I mean, yeah.
Was that like Denver, Colorado, or?
Denver, Colorado. Okay. And a lot of the people I came in contact with were very turned off by not just my accent, but what my accent represents, and representing the Southern gun culture, don't tread on me, protect yourself type of culture that the rest of the United States thinks of the South. And I got a lot of pushback, oh, do you have guns? I bet your house is full of guns.
Yeah, and they're all wrapped in rebel flags too.
Yes, absolutely, right.
Because honestly, that is the stereotype that comes with the accent, that you must have, the rebel flag hanging in your bedroom.
Confederate flag. By the way, where is your Confederate flag?
That would have been perfect in the background.
We would never.
Is it currently up the flagpole in the front yard next to the "Don't Tread on Me"?
No.
That could be a whole nother topic.
Oh gosh,
No,
yeah, that's a whole other can of worms.
I know that's one of the things that drives me crazy is the everybody playing on stereotypes. You know,
it's funny. We joke about it, but growing up, it was totally like General Lee is awesome, right? I mean, we were like proud Southern people, but we didn't know.
We didn't know how damaging
it was just a Southern thing, right? I mean, it was kind of a. That's just the way our parents were like that, right? We're Southern, we're proud, right? But yeah, so it's kind of funny. Yeah.
So what has been of all the places that you guys have ended up living in? What has been the most firearm friendly place that you've ended up?
Texas.
Was it?
I mean, without a doubt, yeah, Texas.
Hey, and don't get me wrong about Colorado. I worked with a ton of guys, and they were all gun guys. Everybody hunted, and that's still a big. It was more of a 50-50 non-gun, right? It seemed like a real hard split in Colorado.
There were transplants into Colorado.
Yeah, it was a lot of people that weren't from Colorado didn't like guns. Now you go to Texas, and it was more of the 80% were fine with guns. The other 20 weren't, right?
And the other 20 were transplants from California.
Right.
So, which is what I've heard is that Texas is not very California friendly.
There is a stark difference. You can definitely tell a stark difference there. Yeah.
But I see some have been converted. Some people from California get there and they're like, oh, you know, they start learning. And I mean, actually, one of the guys I would go shoot my AR with, he was a California guy, and he was a non-gun guy. And then all of a sudden he liked it. And man, that's all he talked about. And that's all he bought.
Yeah.
So
he was,
for the main reason I ask is because I'm usually surprised by the answers for that kind of stuff that I get when I talk to people is because like I have a good friend of mine, grew up in the Chicagoland area, was kind of like he had some guns, but he didn't really enjoy guns. And he moved to Colorado. And that was when he was like, oh man, I bought 3 ARs. I did this, I did that. I'm always out shooting. And then there's guys that I know that go to Texas and they're like, man, I can carry a gun in more places in Illinois than I can in Texas because of the no carry signs. Texas is so used to it that they assume everybody's carrying a gun. So they're a lot more prone to hanging signs up on the windows, where Illinois, a lot of businesses still don't even consider it. And actually the guy that was from the Chicagoland area, he owned a shop that I worked at. We became friends, and when he bought the place, he had a no gun sign, or there was a no carry sign in the window. And I told him, I'm like, man, you probably should take that down. And I said flat out, I'm like, just so you know, I grew up 2 blocks from where this shop is. I'm carrying a gun. And he's like, okay, I'm good with that. But he left the sign in the window until he got 3 or 4 different reviews from the shop of people who walked up to the door, said, nope, I refuse to do business here simply because you're infringing on rights, and left. And then he was out there with a razor blade scraping the thing off the window.
Yeah. I found that I did not find Texas restrictive at all, but I think it's the part of Texas that you're in. There are pockets of very conservative and pockets of maybe not so conservative groups in Texas. I tell the story that I bought a concealed carry purse when we were in Texas. Beautiful, lots of fringe and turquoise, and it's fabulous. But the concealed carry purse, I was taking it into a honky tonk one night, family friendly honky tonk, and George Strait's nephew was singing that night. It was very exciting. But I went to go in, and there was an armed, uniformed police officer at the door. And he says, ma'am, I'm going to have to check your bag. And I said, okay. And so I opened up my purse for him to check it. for firearms, I thought. And he said, "You're good to go." And I said, "Well, don't you want to check the concealed carry in the back?" And he said, "Oh, I don't care if you have a gun, honey, as long as you don't carry in your own liquor."
God bless Texas.
I tell you what, I mean, it was like, oh, okay, well, everybody else must have a gun in here too then. Okay, all right.
It is interesting too. There are parts like around where we live in central Illinois that are pretty good about concealed carry in the gun culture, but you go up to the Chicagoland area and the culture is completely different. It would be the same as down in Texas, going to West Texas, and it's a very free part of the state versus Austin or Houston or even parts of Dallas Fort Worth now. So
Right.
it's really, really interesting too, and I think a part of that is the difference between an urban area and a rural area. But I want to get into a little bit of the course and the parts of the course and what your thoughts were on it. Starting with the first section of the course is on basic pistol knowledge. So Kim, this is where we were talking a lot about these are the types of handguns. These are the parts of handguns. This is where we talk about the 4 firearm safety or responsibility rules. We talk about storage. It's all the technical stuff. Like here's what a round of ammunition actually is. Here are the different types of ammunition. And we also end with a couple of topics on how to shop for a handgun if you're in the market. I guess were there any surprises in there or anything that I'm sure a lot of it was a surprise for you, Kim. Any new information there for you, David, or what were your thoughts on that first section that was all about handgun information?
I ate it up. I just gobbled it up. I thought it was exactly what how do you load a gun? What does a bullet look like? Does this bullet go in this gun? What are the numbers for? I hear these 22, 44, it sounds like they're trying to hike the ball. I mean, I don't understand what these numbers mean. And not to sound like an idiot, because I'm a very smart person. It's just not something I was ever taught. So to me, I thought that was just vital. That was good information. It set the tone. And okay, now I can speak intelligently about what a 22 is.
Yeah, because we got all the nomenclature out of the way. We got all the jargon out of the way, and that sort of thing. Were you a lot more comfortable?
Absolutely.
After that part? Okay.
Absolutely.
David, to you, any surprises there or anything that you weren't aware of?
Yeah, it was, it was a good, I'd say a refresher, right? I mean, it's not, like I say, I'm not a, what I would call a diehard, gun guy. And so I don't read a ton about guns a lot. So some of it was a good refresher for me. It was, even, I can't remember now, there was something that I actually did learn. I was like, I didn't know that. You know what I mean? So it was good. I mean, it was worthwhile, right? It was good to go through that because you never know, the person beside you, what they know and don't know. And I think I even talking to everybody in the class, the other males there, even everybody was like, well, it was good. Like there was something like somebody didn't know, right? So it was good. I think it was a really good refresher for everybody.
Awesome. Well, the next section that we talk about in the class is probably the one that is, in my mind, the most important and also the most difficult one to talk about. And that's talking about use of force. It's not so much how to shoot a gun, but when is it appropriate to use your gun? So we talk about things like, situational awareness. We talk about the actual laws. We talk about use of force, procedures and things like that. What we call it is the mental preparation side of things. We also talk about scenarios and things like that, so going through that section, what was kind of going through your mind as you're listening to use of force or, we talk about flashlights and getting into dark spaces and that sort of thing, transitional spaces. What was going through your mind as we're talking through this section and it gets a little bit more into the mental side of things?
Well, I thought I was mentally prepared and then realized, wait a minute, there's 100 other scenarios I haven't even thought of. Um, but what most stood out for me was at the end of that section, you gave permission to not engage. And I thought that carrying meant that I had to protect everybody. And I did not want that responsibility. I never asked for that. But, you made a great point to say, decide before you're in a situation what you're willing to die for. Decide what you're willing to fight for. And I remember saying there was an example where you showed on the screen, there was a gentleman who stepped up during a robbery at a supermarket, and he saved the day. He saved everyone there. Thankfully, it went the right way, which was great. And I said, what would you do in that situation? And you said, well, of course, I would save the people that were there. And I said, but is it okay that I wouldn't? Because if my children are with me, then I'm going to get my children taken care of. And if there's a risk to them, absolutely. But it would be perfectly okay for that gun to stay holstered and for me to remove myself and my children from the situation.
Mm-hmm. So what you're saying is, just because you have a gun doesn't mean you should use it.
Exactly. And like I said, I felt the responsibility of policing, before I took the class. I thought, oh, well, if you carry a gun, that means you have to be, the FBI, you have to be looking out for what's around you, and you have to protect everybody that's around you. And I don't want that. I don't even want to know how to shoot a gun. Just backing away from that and having the permission to say, I get to choose who knows if I'm carrying or not. I get to choose, what situations I'm comfortable extending myself in.
David, what do you think? What was going through your mind? And not, I don't want to have this be disparaging or anything, but certainly your capabilities or your confidence with a handgun is going to be much, much different than Kim's. Same with me and Heath. Our capabilities in carrying a firearm is going to be greater than somebody that hasn't gone through those levels of training, because we've drilled these types of things and gone through those things. That being said, David, you've been around guns, you've shot guns a lot more than Kim. Did you have that same idea of, this isn't my fight and I can escape? Or were you more thinking that, I have the gun, if I can stop evil, I'm going to stop evil wherever I can?
Yeah, no, I absolutely think that was probably the best part of the class, right? It's just the, putting our, the questions you asked, from the situational point of view of, you would show it, show the scenario and then ask what would you do? And, and I'm thinking the same thing that Kim said, right? Well, now if I'm carrying, I have a responsibility to protect everybody, right? There was almost that that's in the back of your mind. And then as we kind of went through it, you said it, right? You said, well, just because you carry doesn't mean you're responsible. And you're not a trained professional. You are not the police. It's not your job, right? And then I did. That made me feel made me feel more at ease. And then I started paying attention, right, to everything you said about there's a way out of this, right? I mean, don't pull the gun if you don't have to, right? If there's a door, go to the door. As long as you get your family behind you and everybody's protected, take the easy way out. And, I think the one thing that resonated with me was you talked about the cost of pulling a gun out, right? And the fact that you're going to, it's going to cost you money. So you better be, ready. I can't remember the dollar amount you used, but I it's $10,000, right? That's what I always think about, right? It's like,
if you're lucky, 10,000. If
right,
you're lucky.
Yeah. So the idea is, if you're not prepared to pull $10,000 out of your wallet and lay it down, you probably don't need to pull your gun out, right? Because that's what it's going to cost you. Now, there's a difference between life and death, right? But if you're just trying to be, a hero, right? You got to kind of take that in consideration that, hey, there's more to this than just I'm going to pull my gun out and show somebody that I have a gun, right? Because it's going to, there's a lot of complications now. So I think, the idea that, you've always got those factors in the back of your head of like, number one, it's going to cost you money if you pull it out and you pull the trigger. Number two, you're going to escalate the situation if you pull a gun out. Right now there's more than one person with a gun, and that changes everything. And then number three is, are you prepared to die? Right? Because if you're going to point it at him, he's going to point it back at you typically. So there's that. There's a lot of scenarios that have to play out. So the right thing to do, right, which is what you showed us, is if you can get out, get out. And call the police, call 911, right? Do something. If it's a matter of life and death where you can't, then that changes the game, right? That's the only time that it's really worth pulling it out. So it was that resonated with me. It resonated with everybody in the class. I think that was that different. Being able to talk through the scenarios, ask the questions, and then have to think about it, right? It was a game changer for me.
So it's interesting you talk about that, because that's the impact that a lot of people have with the class, is once you start thinking and placing yourself in those scenarios. If you save a life, I mean, I think we would all agree that $10,000 is pretty cheap for a life, that you would pay a lot more. And I don't know how much life insurance you have, but I'm sure Kim would give it all back to have you back if something were to happen. And there's the financial cost, but there's also the human cost, and I think everybody initially are influenced by Hollywood and the media to, if I have a gun, I can be the hero and I'm going to be the hero. But it takes a certain amount of capability, a certain amount of responsibility and training to be effective and capable with that firearm. And certainly, we feel the more training you have, the more capabilities you have to make the right decision and to do the right thing. But ultimately, we carry to protect ourselves and our loved ones. And, David, God forbid you're ever in a situation where it could be life or death. I'm sure Kim would want you to make the right decision and come home to her, and vice versa. If, you're on the road, I'm sure that you would want Kim to be able to defend herself and the boys as well. But
I think, a couple of the scenarios, right, where there were people who even tried to pull their guns out and got hung up in their clothing and all. And you look at it from that perspective, and you're almost, and for me, I'm like thinking, you know what, that would probably be me. Like, I'm not smooth enough. My nerves are probably going to be racked, right? Because the adrenaline's flowing, I'm going to make a mistake. So chances are it's probably still not going to turn out well, and I've never really thought through that piece of it. So that was a good, it can go sideways quick, right? So it was that was a good one of just like, man, I do need to get more training, right? I do need to be more confident and comfortable with being able to pull out a gun before I ever even think about, getting mixed up in a situation. I mean, luckily, I've never even been close to a situation like that in my life where I've needed to intervene. Matter of fact, if I did have to intervene, I probably still wouldn't pull my gun. You know what I mean? Unless he has a gun, right? If there's a chance, I'm a big enough guy, I could probably step in 9 times out of 10 and just diffuse the situation. So that still will be the last, worst case scenario, right? Having to pull out a gun. But just even that, just the mental aspect of, am I prepared to do this, right? Can I, do it and not put myself in a bad situation? So that was phenomenal. Yeah. Discussions that we had.
Well, and that's one thing that I think gets glossed over by a lot of people, is just the idea that above the legal recourse, you still have the moral aspect of that. You have the familial aspect of that. I mean, are your friends and neighbors of different belief systems? There's a chance you're going to lose friends, family, and think differently of yourself depending on your moral outlook on things. Right. And, I think that's something that gets glossed over way too easily by people, in the sense that, the long-term ramifications of, I needed to use force against somebody else, it's not just a financial legal outlook.
Right.
And that's one thing with sitting in on Kevin's class I really liked about him taking the extra time to focus on parts of that in that class.
Yeah, what we call it is the spiritual fitness aspect of it. So, what we talk about is the ability to deal with the aftermath of a potential deadly force encounter. And that was actually going to be one of the next questions I asked you. Thank you for Mr. Master of Transition there. But, had you thought about the idea that in order to defend your life or the lives of your loved ones, that you would have to potentially take another life? And was that something that you were able to reconcile through the class?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I was, I guess maybe I'm more mature, right? I'm 44 years old, if you call that mature, right? But how would I have thought about it 20 years ago? It would be totally different, right? Now, yeah, it probably would bother me now. Back then, it probably wouldn't have bothered me. It was, you're young and dumb, right? But, yeah, I mean, it would probably weigh heavy on me, but I think I could now, for me personally, I think I could reconcile with the fact that, if it's either me or one of my loved ones, right? It's got to come down to something really bad happening. So, I think I could live with it, right? I'm sure it would bother me.
Yeah.
But
it doesn't have to be easy,
right.
But it's something you could do.
But I know now that it would have to be a horrible situation that there was no way out, right? I mean and I can live with that, right? Knowing that I made the right decision, based on now that I know, I've got more like, I guess, just simple training, right? Of like, if I can get out of it, I'm getting out. Like I would know, I wouldn't second guess myself because I would already thought through, can I get out? Is there a way to avoid this? And if it comes down to it, then I could live with it, right? I'm sure it would bother me, just like it would bother anybody else. But I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I didn't come to a conclusion in the class. The class gave me a lot to contemplate and pray about. It took me several days to work through, maybe a couple of weeks to work through what I was prepared to do. And as a mama bear, even though my children can bench press me at this point, I still have that protective nature over them. So if my children are at risk, whatever I have to do, and then whatever I have to live with afterwards. But it's, maintain life of my children. If it's, then I had to play all the different scenarios. Well, what if it's just me? What if I'm in the house? What if I'm outside of the house? What if the person is coming towards me? What if the person is running away from me? What if the person is, so there's all these different scenarios, and I just had to put it to bed because it'll keep you up late at night praying about that. But I just had to put it to bed and say, God will lead me where I need to act and where I don't. So at this point, I am not carrying outside of the home because I came to the conclusion that unless they are coming into my home, I don't feel comfortable outside of the home defending myself.
Well, to be honest, I think that is an extremely positive takeaway, because I think far too many people who haven't thought that through thoroughly end up carrying a gun, and more than likely that's going to just end up being used against them in a bad time, and there's been several people over the years that I've talked to and said, look, like, I understand where you're coming from, but I don't think that you're mentally ready for everything that comes along with that. And And of course, it's usually people that I know who have not gone through training, and I've tried to get them out and they won't come out. And they're like, no, I got this. And that's one of the aspects that I think a lot of people end up glazing over. And it's unfortunate, because I think if they took some time for personal reflection, they would see that that just isn't in them. And myself personally, I wouldn't say cold, but I compartmentalize very easily. So for me, that comes off as callous, but it's not. It hits one of those points that, for me, something that may be easier that I can compartmentalize to deal with, 25 years down the road from now is a little bit different from the person who can't do that and has to deal with everything they just went through in the moment.
Right.
And that can be very debilitating, I think. So
Absolutely.
So there's one way that I've kind of reconciled this in my mind, because I certainly don't want to take a life, but I'll do whatever I can to defend myself, or my children or my wife or my loved ones, obviously, because even though it may be my life that's at risk, my wife and children need me just as much. It would be very difficult for them if I were now no longer here. That being said, if I have to use deadly force to defend myself or my family, I realize it's not my choice that led to that. It's the choice of whoever's threatening me and my family. Their choices have been made, and that is not my responsibility to help people make the right choice. It's my responsibility to defend myself if they make wrong choices. And certainly attacking me would be a wrong choice.
Well, and I think too that goes back that goes back to gender roles as well. We have very traditional gender roles. We're a Christian family, and so I think that probably does weigh heavier on David. I'm speaking for him, but probably does weigh heavier on him as the provider, protector of our home, and rather than for me, it's as the nurturer. For me, it's easier to just put it to bed, put it away, don't think about it, But for you probably have thought about it for a long time.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good point. I mean, red-blooded male, right? I mean, it just feels like, and Kim, she sees it too. Anytime we walk in a restaurant, bar, whatever, right? And I'm casing the place out, I'm looking, double checking, right? And she doesn't pay attention to anything, right?
But that's not paranoia, though. That's that's just being aware.
Situational awareness.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been around enough guys, and men, and man, alcohol can do some crazy things to people, right? And I mean, it's just, if you're mixing, especially medicine with alcohol, I'm always just on the lookout, right? Just because I feel that's my job, number one, right? I mean, it's just kind of, you got to, that's our job, just to protect. So yeah, I'm always on alert, just kind of prepared.
And to me, that's one of those things I feel that my wife felt that way for a long time, until she started coming out and doing stuff with me, and she went, wow, so my wife actually outshoots me, and
can confirm.
Yes.
Which is typically the norm.
David, you know what that's like,
yes,
right?
I'm aware. Yes.
We're going to get to that in a couple of minutes here.
But, to me, that's one of those things where you hear all this like sheepdog and all these other terms that are, I think are just ridiculous. But at the same time, to me, when we go out, it's like, well, if there's an open space towards the wall, I'll probably take it.
Sure.
But at the same time, do I think twice about putting my back to the door of a building I'm going in? Not in the slightest, because that impedes my daily life and it's just not realistic. And I typically try and dress in normal looking clothes. I don't get all, I don't go out trying to look like I'm the tactical guy, even at the range. I usually try and show up in blue jeans to go teach a tactical rifle class, right? And I think I'm personally anti-open carry for myself. If other people want to make that choice, that's on them, right? But I feel it puts you into a category that puts you into selection for if bad things happen. Well, I kind of feel the same thing about dressing in tactical clothing and going out to dinner. Like okay, so I'm not open carrying, but everybody in the room is looking at that guy going, he's got a gun. So, so I try to go out of my way not to do things like that and just live my life as normal as possible. And not concern myself tremendously with a lot of that. Now, not saying awareness isn't still there, because I'm still watching what's going on in my environment. But I lost it. Kevin, what do you got?
Well, here's a question for the two of you. So I want you to go back before you took the class and what your mental state was and your mental preparation was before that class. I have a saying that if it's not a process, it's a problem. So, if your life were in danger, the lives of your loved ones were in danger before, and you can pick any scenario that you want to pick, the scenario is inconsequential. Did you feel like you had a plan before the class on how you would react in a deadly force encounter? Like, did you have an idea of what you would have done? Like, okay, I would have done this, this, and this. Afterwards, I would have done this, this, and this. I mean, had you thought about any of that before taking the class?
No, not at all for me. During the 6 months I referenced earlier, when David and I had to live apart for his job, I was awoken in the middle of the night by what I thought at the time was someone coming through my front door. And I thought, I sat straight up in bed, and I've got, a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old in the other room, and thought, I don't have any way of defending myself. I mean, we're just going to go hide and maybe call 911. I don't know what else to do. And I remember feeling so mad at myself for not having a plan. Now, the noise of the front door crashing down was simply the spring in the garage door snapping, and it shook the house. It was very, very loud.
I know like exactly what that is. Yeah,
yes,
I know.
Yeah, it was very loud. But that was such a scary moment for me that I put it away and I didn't think about it again. So I did not have a plan other than to say, David, where are you? That's about it.
David, how about you? Get into a bad situation. Did you have a plan? And if so, what was it?
No, I guess, I do remember a similar scenario to Kim. We were, at home one night.
Christmas.
Christmas time. I heard a glass shatter, right? And I knew it was a window. I knew somebody was coming in, grabbed my 9mm. And, my first thought is, all right, how's this going to play out? I'm upstairs, they're downstairs, and I know I'm like, the worst thing you could do is sneak up on somebody, right? So I just hollered out, I've got a gun and I'm coming downstairs. And then I gave them 30 seconds, right? I'm like, that's, if they're not smart enough, right, to leave, then, I guess it's on, right? So I told Kim, I'm like, hey, grab the phone, have 911. And, I flip the lights on and, start kind of peeking, and I don't hear anything, which, kind of gave it away, right? I'm like, all right, maybe it wasn't the glass, because it woke me, up. I was dead asleep. It was a Christmas ornament that fell.
A giant glass ball
and
falling off the tree.
Yeah, and it broke. But, I guess common sense also plays into it a little bit, right? Maybe it's not a plan, but maybe you're giving yourself a chance. To your point, I've never thought it through. What would I do in these situations? But I guess common sense does come into play a little bit. But now, after your course, dude, absolutely have a plan.
Yeah.
Right. And it's, and I know, at least I know what to think through, which is to get the hell out of there. Number one, right. In a bad situation where somewhere I can't control the narrative, right. I'm getting out if I can. If it's my house, right, then I'm giving whoever the bad guy, he's going to have more chances to get out of there without anything ever happening than he can ever imagine, right? Because that's the worst thing. I don't want bullets flying right in my house. That's worst case scenario. So, yeah, the police are getting called. I'm protecting the upstairs first, right? That's, if they want anything, they can have it. Just get the hell out, right? I got insurance. It's not worth, dying over, right? So, yeah, to that point, you brought that up in the class, right? It's not worth dying, not unless somebody is in harm's way, right? Take the car, take the TV, right? Whatever. I can get another one, right? That's easy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, now I would say I absolutely do have a plan.
Yeah, we did not have a plan. We do have a technical plan now. If somebody's breaking in, we're in a great situation where all of our bedrooms are in one part of the house, in this house. And so we do have a plan in place. And it has even bled into other parts of our lives. We did not have a fire plan in place. Like, what do we do? I just didn't think about
well,
that.
She didn't. I did. I bought fire extinguishers and I know where they're at. But you're right. But you and the boys,
what would we do? We did have a fire alarm go off in the middle of the night several months back, and David jumped up like Rambo, ready to jump into action, and I'm like wiping the slobber off my face from having just been out of it. Like, what's happening? What day is it? Why is the noise still happening? So I didn't have a plan. I'm like, I guess I don't know what to do. My 17-year-old didn't even wake up. So we had to talk through again. Here's our plans. This is what we do, But David says his plan now is to throw the gun at me and run go hide in the closet.
So I've got a couple of short stories with that go along with that, because that cracks me up, especially the Christmas ornament one. But I always, after getting my wife out to a couple of classes, it was like, all right, I'm fast and she's accurate. So it's like, all right, so if it's something that happens and it's up close, I'll take care of it. But if it's far away, I'll take the gun and hand it to you so you can deal with it. But we had one probably 4 or 5, maybe longer. I'm not sure. Years ago, where the house alarm started going off in the middle of the night, and I woke up and I'm like, honey, all right, I need you to be ready to call the cops if we need to. And I go downstairs and I'm like, I have no, I had like a pistol class at this point. So I go downstairs and I'm like clearing the house, and I get all done and I'm like, man, there's nothing going on. I like turn the alarm off and I went, oh, the basement. And I go downstairs and there's a bat that came down through the chimney and he's flying around and he set off the motion sensor in the basement. So I go back upstairs and I'm like, honey, don't worry. It was just a bat. And she goes, huh? She had rolled over and got back to sleep. She was like, oh, I was like, what the hell? You were like my standby. She goes, I had a feeling it was fine. So I went back.
Nice.
And then one other time we had a guy who like across a little ways across the street there was a drunk driver who hit an empty house. And when he hit it, he caught the gas main. So the entire house blew up, and it blew out a couple of the windows on my house. And Kelly wakes up and she goes, "Oh my God, what was that?" And I like stumble out of bed. I look out the window and I go, "A house across the street blew up. It's fine. Go back to bed." and I did. I crashed back out. She's like, "There's a house on fire across the street." I'm like, "It's fine. Go back to bed. Nobody lives there."
Wow.
So it's funny the things that in the middle of the night, how we deal with stuff,
And imagine if it is somebody, coming to do you harm and trying to make life or death decisions, rubbing the sleep out of your eyes. And, Heath and I have taken quite a bit of CQB training, clearing houses. We spent hundreds of hours in a shoot house. And I got to say, if something goes bump in the middle of the night, clearing my house by myself is the last thing. Or even if Heath is crashing over at our place, we're not going to go to guns and start clearing our house like it's a shoot house, because we both know how bad things turn out on an ambush and how easy that is to be ambushed, even in your own house where the layout, the lights and everything. So bravo for you guys for, recognizing that and taking that lesson. But
well, thank you.
So now I want to move to the exciting part of the class, where we actually went out into the range and started shooting. First we did some dry fire and worked on grip and things like that. And then we went to actually shooting out on the range. We talked a little bit about before. Kim, you had no experience shooting. David, you've shot a little bit of pistol, but you shot guns, so it wasn't uncomfortable for you.
No.
By far the most common problem that we see with beginning students is with grip. And so we work a lot on the grip, not so much on the sights and all that sort of thing, but we work a lot with the grip. For you going to the range, was that something that was difficult to transition to, being shown a new grip, or was that something that you're really open to? How did you feel kind of trying out the tweaks that we were doing with your grip? Or were you just along for the ride and whatever happens?
No, it was good. It's like you said, I haven't shot that many pistols, right? So it was, and it's been a while since I've shot pistols at all. So it was good for me. It was a phenomenal, refresher to get back out, kind of get used to the grip again, shoot. I wish the weather had been better and we could have shot, for longer. I would have enjoyed that. But yeah, it was totally worthwhile for me. So it, it helped with my comfort level, right? Because for me, it was a new 9mm for me that I picked up. So it was a new Glock. So that it was good for me to actually get out and shoot that. But yeah, it was worthwhile, and even just changing up my stance a little bit, right, from what I've been done in the past, and it was, and I still struggle because I want to shoot with my right eye, but I'm left eye dominant. So after shooting, I still shot pretty good, but I was like, man, I really need to shoot some more. I've got to figure this out, right? I got to dial it in. And that was, like I said, I wish we had more time, because I would have liked to, well, more time and cheaper ammo, right? this is
especially now
shooting 9mm, right? But yeah, so that was another, probably a problem, but that and the weather, but yeah, we haven't been back. Now that the weather's good, I absolutely plan on us going back. As a matter of fact, I want to join the the lodge out there. That would definitely be worthwhile for us.
Awesome. Kim, how about you? How was shooting a gun for you for the first time?
I was worried that I would have an emotional reaction. I was worried that it would be upsetting for me. And it was actually quite the opposite. I was very surprised by my reaction, which was one of excitement rather than fear. So I like to be in control of a situation, and I felt very in control of the gun. I didn't feel, that at any time I was at any kind of risk or anything, but what I knew about grip was only what I'd seen in Hollywood, so what the correct grip, well, it's natural to me now because that's the only grip I know, but it's not like what you see on the movies. So that was surprising for me, that, and two, finding the right size gun for my hands. I didn't even know that. I just figured they all felt the same, but no, they don't. The size of the grip and the what you call it, the power of the gun itself, the
caliber.
Yes, the caliber. Thank you. I didn't realize there was such a difference there. I mean, I thought, recoil is recoil. I didn't know. I'd never shot one. I shot the 9mm, and I felt there was a visceral reaction to that. I felt that, and I did not like it. I shoot the 44. No, 22. Sorry. That's the
you have a G44, but it's a
Glock 44 that takes 22. Okay, but I shot that, and I was like, okay, I can do this. I feel comfortable with this, and I felt like I had more control over the firearm.
So now, is that what you have as a? Well, you said you don't carry outside the house, so is that what you have as?
That's
for the
what
house
I
gun?
have near my bed. Yes, that's
okay.
That's new. Like we
just got that.
We had to wait, till you could get one. But
availability on those is pretty rough. I've actually been keeping an eye out for myself just for availability for teaching. So then, Dave, what do you carry?
So the Glock 9mm, the Glock 17.
A 17? Okay.
Yeah. I just like the. Was it a 7? Yeah.
17.
17.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Was it a 17 or 19? I think it was a 19.
You got me second guessing myself.
It's a Glock 19. I was
it is a 19. Yep. Yeah, I think so. I'm like, wait a minute.
So I carried a 19 for a very long time, and by chance I ended up with a 17 and went, I don't know that I'm gonna like this, and I started shooting it, and now that's my primary gun for everything, just because I thought, my hands aren't that big. A 19 fits me great. And then I got used to a 17, and I went, oh man, this is actually better for, personal fitment, and I think that's a big thing with all that, is a lot of people skim over what fits you as a person the best. And
that was helpful. Yeah, Kevin, when you brought all the different, different sizes, right? Just being able to fit, try the different ones, right? That was really good, because you're right. I mean, how would a normal homeowner, or a normal person be able to try that many guns, other than going to a gun store and try them? But even then, they don't. You're looking at price tags. You're not thinking about fit. You're thinking about how much do I have to spend. I think that was huge, right? Having all the dummy guns.
And to me, one of the biggest things that I think is wrong with the way this is going about is, right off the bat, for women, everything is assumed, they need tiny guns because whatever reason, I'm not really sure, but tiny guns are always worse to shoot and less reliable. So, finding something that fits you and working with that is going to be the best bet, as opposed to, look how small this is. It fits on my keychain.
Well, I did that. I bought her a Smith & Wesson little 380, right, with a little laser
Okay.
on it. And I'm like, it's perfect for her hands. She got
I
small
didn't
hands.
like it.
Yeah, she doesn't like it. It's too small.
And the recoil on those is usually really bad, and the guns are really thin, so it digs into your hand more. The recoil hurts more. There's, I've actually, that's one thing I do when I take female shooters out is I use the revolver aspect, and I bring out a little 38 snub nose, and then I bring out a full size 357, but it's a 4-inch barrel gun. And I'm like, I give them the exact same ammo. And I'm like, all right, now this is what the gun shop is going to tell you need. Shoot this. And they're like, wow, that really sucks to shoot. And I'm like, all right, now this is the exact same ammo from a full-size gun. They shoot it, and they look at me confused, like, this is a bigger gun, but man, this is so much nicer to shoot. And I, it's one of those points I always go back to. And then, then I start working into the semi-auto stuff, but it's a lot easier to show people that, because with revolvers, simply on the standpoint of, unfortunately, gun shops tend to go, oh, you're a woman, you need a super tiny snub nose 38 because that's the best thing in the world.
If your gun shop says that, find a new gun shop.
Absolutely.
But I want to talk about that qualifier here for a minute. Walk me through what your thought process was before the qualifier. How confident were you in your ability to pass the qualifier? Let's start with that, and then I've got a couple of follow-up questions on it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I wasn't really worried. I guess I've shot enough, right, that it was. I felt confident, because we weren't going to be that far away. If we had been a little further, I'd have probably been sweating a little bit. But I guess I was reluctant a little, but I mean, not really. I felt pretty good.
Yeah, and we're shooting at 5, 7, and 10 yards for anybody who's listening.
Sorry, yeah. So yeah, I felt pretty confident. I mean, I know you were terrified.
No, I did not think I would. I was just pleased I hit the board the first time. I did not think that I would fare well. It was very difficult for me to envision 5, 7, and 10 yards, I guess before I was told the distances, I'm envisioning, like a sniper distance, in this class. I'm
25 yards.
We're going to be like a football field away.
Yeah, 100, 150 yards.
Yeah,
and you've got a circle this big,
exactly.
2-inch circle.
Clue. And, I didn't realize how easy it was to hit the target. But I guess most defense type of situations, you would be 5, 7, or 10 yards away. I mean,
closer in, about 7 yards on average, that sort of thing. But what do you think changed that for you from going to, I'm not going to pass this, to doing as well as you did? What do you think was the turning point for that, either mentally or physically, for you?
Well, number one, it was 10 degrees, and this Southern girl did not like the cold. I wanted to get it over with. but seriously, the turning point for me, and I know it sounds like something very small, but when I shot the first time, you put your hand on my shoulder and to steady me or to reassure me, and that made all the difference in the world. I felt like, okay, I've got somebody here with me. I can do this. And once I did it the first time, I thought, okay, all right, it's not so bad. I'm still a lady. The world is still turning. Things are okay. And each time you just placed your hand very gently on my shoulder, and it was a very reassuring gesture. And I would like to have that every time I shoot. Can you just touch my shoulder and tell me it's going to be okay?
So, Kevin, in the shoot house, you never put your hand on my shoulder to help me get that shot. So I'm feeling a bit left out right now. I'm just throwing that out there.
I'm surprised in the doorway. I pretty much envelop you. Like my side, my arm, everything is just like right up against you. I don't know how you don't feel reassured by that.
It is comforting.
I'm a very kinesthetic person. So for me, like for Heath, I know I don't know if he appreciates this or not, but I do. When we're working together as a team, I like having that light body contact. If I'm coming online with him, I touch his foot with my foot when I'm coming online. For me, that's a very comforting thing. And what I found, especially in shooting, if somebody's a little bit weary or afraid to shoot, just that gentle hand on the shoulder. And in today's world, I always ask permission. Do you mind if I put my hand on your hands, or do you mind if I put my hand on your shoulder? Because especially, with women, you don't know what they've been through, if that contact is uncomfortable to them or if it's comforting. And oftentimes I found that just that gentle hand on the shoulder is a way of saying, hey, I'm right here. You're going to do fine. You're going to get through this. No problem. So I'm really happy to hear that actually worked for you. But let's talk about the results. So, Kim, how did you shoot compared to your husband?
My husband did very well.
He did
do better.
Yes. I remember specifically that day too, that the other guys, I had all of you guys shoot first, and then I had Kim shoot last, and all of you were comparing, the targets. Oh, I've got the best target. I've got the best target. And I'm like, dude, just wait. Kim's going to shoot. And I'm telling you, Kim's going to outshoot all of you.
It was very satisfying. I still believe that they threw the game for me, but
no, they were trying. No, they were really trying.
Guys are full of ego, so giving it away just to be nice is not something any of us do in shooting.
It was a lot of fun to feel like I was doing a good job, of course. But what I felt for the first time was a tool as an extension of myself. So I thought to myself, and I remember asking permission, is it okay if I try a headshot? And so, because I just wanted to see, am I aiming at the circles, or can I control where it's going? Or am I just in the optimal space and my hands are positioned right? So I tried, to hit at a different part on the target, and I was able to hit it. And I thought, wow, that's great. Okay, so I feel like I have complete control of this tool in my hand. And I felt very confident afterwards. I felt like, okay, all right, if I needed to shoot somebody standing still, then I could. I feel very confident about that. Now, if they're coming at me, with deadly force, I'll get somewhere on the body. It may not be accurate, but somewhere on the body, I will give them something to stop and think about. At least I hope.
Yeah, and more than likely, you presenting a firearm is going to do quite a bit if somebody's coming after you. That is going to be a deterrent, number one. And number two, your ability to place shots on target with the control that you had and the control that you demonstrated obviously is going to give them another something to think about. So confidence wise now, if you had to use your firearm for deadly force, how confident are the two of you that you could do what needed to be done with that firearm?
Spiritual fitness side away from it, if I've already gotten through that and I do have to make a shot, I feel very confident that I'm at least going to hit the target.
Okay. David, how about you?
Yeah, for me, it's I guess just, throughout the years of shooting, sporting clays, stuff like that, I even with a shotgun, I realized I'm only probably a 60%, maybe 70 at best, for a moving target. And I know guys that do 80s and 90s, right, that are really good. So I feel pretty comfortable, but it's not like the movies, right? It's going to take more than one shot. So I feel pretty confident that whether he's moving, I'm moving something, right? There's that dynamic of it. I feel pretty comfortable just because I've done it, right? From a sporting clay aspect, but
shoot and skeet, they're quite a few yards out from you, and they're about this big. You've got.
Yeah, I feel pretty confident, right? I know I'm not a dead shot, but I mean I'm not just shooting once. I can promise you. That's
well, and that's the thing too. We always preach that Hollywood has done us such a disservice with the one shot and done. It's very rarely that you continue to engage the target until the threat is no longer a threat. Right. And one shot isn't always going to do it. Sometimes it does. Sometimes they give up after one shot, but you need to continue to engage the target until they are no longer a threat to you. And that's the most important part of that. Heath, what do you have?
So, with you as a shotgun shooter, with actually getting out and shooting skeet, I think that's another thing that Hollywood does a disservice to, and the shooting community is, shotguns, you don't even need to aim. You just point it down a hallway and it'll do the job for you, right? And I'm of the platforms, the shotgun is my least spent for time. That said, not saying I don't appreciate shotguns. I like shotguns. That's one that is not too far from me a lot of the time. But personally speaking, I'm more comfortable with my rifle than I am with my shotgun at this point. So that's my go-to. So that bump in the night moment, I'm kind of curious what your go-to is for that. Are you going for a handgun, a rifle, a shotgun? I mean, I know that's kind of a little bit outside of the context of what we're talking about here, but I mean, comfort comes into that to a point as well. So I'm a little curious. What's both you guys go to?
Yeah. I mean, now it would be the pistol, right? Just because you have, I think, more flexibility, right? You're not walking around with something sticking out that you got to hold down, right? I mean, you got issues when you turn a corner. It's definitely the 9mm for me.
We're not sleeping with the AR.
Tucked
under our pillow at night. No.
And it sounds funny, but for me, I do. Yeah, well, not under the pillow, but my rifle is my go-to for that.
That's Abby's go-to too. She's way more comfortable with her rifle than she is with the pistol.
Wow,
surprising.
And it's my light's there. Now that said, I will still grab my handheld light because I don't want to be unintentionally pointing my rifle at my kid decided to go downstairs and get a snack and I just muzzle punched my kid because, I was freaked out or something. But, no, it was just a curious question that spurred. So is Kevin's concealed carry the only class at this point for both of you guys?
Yes.
Yeah.
Did taking that class make you guys want to proceed going forward with other stuff?
It did for me, for sure. Yeah.
Yes. It really stretched me spiritually, emotionally, to have to think through all those things that came after the class. Okay, I've got to think through this. I have apprehension on stirring those same emotions again. Would I be prepared for fill in the blank, especially some of those combat type classes. But I was so pleasantly surprised with my reaction to shooting, that maybe I would feel more empowered and and confident afterwards. I think I just have the same apprehension I did in the beginning.
Because, so my wife has done pistol courses. She's never come out and done a rifle class. And I know Abby is comfortable with her rifle over the pistol.
Yeah, she's more comfortable with her rifle over her pistol.
And whereas my wife, Kelly, she had zero rifle experience. She's at most maybe shot 100 rounds with a rifle in her life. And that was because I was like, no, trust me, this thing's awesome. Here, shoot it now, and but she actually came out I don't know, Kevin, a month or two ago, and did a CQB class, which is rifle focused because it's easier to control the safety with the rifle in that type of an environment. And my wife was super reserved about the idea. She was like, man, I really don't want to take this class. Like,
reserved is an understatement. She did not want to take the class.
Yeah, she pretty much said, no, I'm not taking the class. And
she was sick to her stomach that morning getting into the class.
And I, from my perspective, I went, nope, honey, I get it. That's fine. I don't want to push you into something you don't want to do because you're not going to be happy. You're going to be upset with me, and it was other peers that talked her into actually doing the class, and she did it, and she went, wow, I like the rifle way more than the pistol. Like, man, this thing is great. And then she started trying to steal my rifle, and I had to put a hard no.
But by the way, to her credit as a student, it was a similar experience that you had, Kim, where you outshot everybody else in the class because you had this healthy respect for it. You listened to what the instructor said, and your outcomes match that. With Kelly, Heath's wife, when she took the class, she wasn't necessarily the fastest guy there or the fastest student, but it's not about speed. By the numbers, she actually would have been the top shooter in that class, despite her lack of experience, because she had a very healthy respect for the process, but also listened intently to the instructors when they said, do this. She did it. And that's what we find a lot of times with women, why I love teaching women's classes, and why I love teaching women in general, because it's an amazing experience to say something to a woman and they actually listen to you. I'm not used to that in my home.
Yeah.
I don't know what your home is like, but what kind of wrapping up here, what I want to talk a little bit about is, those future classes. Oftentimes we are so focused on getting people into training. What are some of the things, I guess, first of all, and I'll have some follow-up questions to this, what kind of classes do you think are available to you guys as somebody who's new into your training path, who just took one class? If you do want to take additional training, awesome. If you don't, that's fine too. Let us know. But, what kind of classes do you think are available to you to take?
Yeah, honestly, I don't know. I mean, that's as you were talking through that, I'm like, I don't even, like, where do you even go to look to find it? Find what classes are available, yeah, obviously. Right. And I'm like,
yeah, talk to us.
But nowadays, right. If I don't see it pop up on my phone, I really don't give it a second thought. You know what I mean? It's kind of that, dude, everything I'm interested in, is an auto feed. It comes to me now. Right. And, that's what's so fresh on my mind, then once we, I think about it, I'm like, oh yeah, I did think about, I want to take some extra classes, but if it's not right in front of me, I'm not paying attention to it,
Wow.
So that would be helpful. Like, I mean, just even to, just being able to get an email or a monthly, if it's a monthly email, be fine, right? Of, hey, these classes are coming up, are you interested, right? Because that's, dude, I got to admit, I am that direct or, marketing, right? It works.
Yeah. Well, now that we've said that in front of both of our phones and an iPad, I'm sure we will get feeds tomorrow in our, Facebook and Instagram and everything else of here are local classes in your area.
Unfortunately, those are usually sponsored and like of the lowest tier that you could possibly get.
Yeah.
But, so you feel that like a weekly, monthly newsletter from companies is a positive, absolutely, not a burden?
No, I would subscribe to a monthly newsletter. Absolutely. My job is in marketing, so I believe in the power of marketing. So have no problem, reading through and understanding what they're trying to put forth. If it's helpful and useful information, I'll keep getting that thing. Absolutely.
So my next question on that is, so Kevin puts together a really good force on force class where it's a scenario based class and practically tactical, defensive elements, the training side of practically tactical also like has a really phenomenal force on force class as well. Now, the thing I end up coming across with the students I teach regularly is they go, well, I'm not yet to that level where force on force is where I want to be. And in all the training stuff that I did, I wish force on force would have been more available, because at the time I started into this, it wasn't. It was pretty much law enforcement, military only for force on force. But now, a lot of the bad training I can flush out with force on force stuff. And so is that something that you guys would consider getting into, or is that still really intimidating?
I guess you know what force on force classes are.
Oh yes, that's
good. So I mean that's our jargon, but
that's a good clarification.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a description. Hey, here's what you're going to do. Here's the time that you need to plan on. I mean, just the basics of it, right? That would be great. Now, having said that, as we were talking about it, I was thinking a little about what we talked about earlier, which was just even the basics of what I would maybe call home defense, right? Of just thinking through your plan. Where's your gun? How do you react, right? I mean, how do you situate yourself? How many times do you call out? How many times do you give the person, whatever is breaking in a chance? I mean, simple stuff like that. I think that would even be a great class, right? That's more realistic, in my opinion, right? That's more, not that, we do appreciate guns, right? But that's kind of not my hobby. You know what I mean? I'm a golfer. That's probably what I do first and foremost. I think more about golf than I think about anything, right? I got to get to the driving range. I got to go play so many times a week, so for me, like the next best thing would just be home defense, something simple like that. That's a very simple, how can I take it one step better, right? I mean, maybe, probably, stair step this thing a little bit, from a comfort level.
I think, or force on force, or where you go through and you clear the rooms or something like that, I have zero interest in. What I do have interest in is I'm a very competitive person, but only with myself. So to compete with someone else, that's off-putting for me. But to do better than what I did last time is very exciting for me. So if I were to be able to do like a long-range rifle shooting, if there's a point system, if make it more of a sport, then it's something that, meanwhile, I'm becoming comfortable and familiar with a tool that I can use in defense, but I'm not putting myself because I don't intend to put myself in a situation where I would need defense. That's going to be a last resort type of situation for me. So I don't want to dwell on that. I don't want to prepare for that. I would rather just be familiar with the firearm and say, okay, well, I have great accuracy at a standing target. Now let's try a moving target. Now let's try, all the while those targets are not shaped like people. Those targets are not, I'm not associating that with hurting someone. Like, I just want to be able to use the tool in a very objective sense of how accurate can I be.
We need to introduce you to our friend, the B8 target.
The what?
The B8. The
It's
B8 target.
So
it's kind of a standard target.
12-inch, 14-inch overall. Well, I mean, I know it gets bigger depending on your scoring zones, but the primary
ring is 8 inches.
8-inch.
Yeah, circle. The real scoring area for us is 8 inches.
So I'm curious you guys' thoughts on what both of you guys think force on force would be.
So the world that I live in is I run an animal rescue, a dog rescue. So when we say force on force, I'm envisioning a man in pads with a dog and training in a live action. Somebody can physically be hurt here. There is an animal and we are training with it. So that's my idea of force on force is
okay.
Two grown men going after each other and you wrestle and
beat each other up. And
I am 5'2", and I in no way, shape, or form want to put myself in a situation where I am going to be
pummeled,
accosted, attacked, infringed upon in any way. I would much rather the target be hundreds of yards from me. And
David, what's your thoughts on that?
I know we briefly talked about it at the training, and I want to say it was like how to react to situations, right? I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, I really can't remember.
We talked about it being like the Men in Black, where the girl with the books comes out, and
those books are way too advanced for her.
Yeah, what is she doing at 2 a.m. with those kind of books?
Yeah. Well, here's the thought. I'm sorry, Heath. Go ahead.
No. Go ahead,
I was just going to say, so that does bring up a really, really good point. So often we think that the gun is the answer, that if we get into a force on force scenario, that the purpose of the exercise is to win the exercise and to end up shooting the bad guy. But there are many, many different facets. There are some classes that is your experience, where it's, when and how to gun. One thing that we try to do, and especially in the defensive elements class, and not that, to turn this into a commercial or anything, but one thing that is so important is not just the knowing when and how to gun, but also the observation skills. So take that Men in Black scenario. He was able to describe this little girl and the books that she's carrying to a great detail to justify his shooting. Now, I know it's a joke and it's silly and stuff, but there is a bit of truth to that. Sometimes being a responsibly armed citizen, your focus should be on your observation skills. Can you effectively describe what a suspect is wearing, what they look like? Can you describe the car? Is it just it was I think a dark colored car, or was it it was a navy Toyota Corolla, probably a late model,
1997 to 1999.
And it was a 2-door or a 4-door, and the first two
Arizona plates.
And the first two license plate numbers were TL. So, there are a lot of aspects. I think a good force on force class is not just about when and how to shoot, but also your observation skills. When you walk into a room, what do you see? Do you see something that bothers you? Do you hear something that bothers you? So, observation skills are huge. And, one of my mentors and I were talking about this earlier this week about your observation skills, and a good force on force class will work not only your decision making skills, but your observation skills as well. But one thing I the last kind of series of questions I want to end on, because we're just over the 2 hour mark here, and God bless you two people who are still with us. But what can we do as instructors, and all the instructors that are going to listen to this as well? What can we do to be more approachable to people who are not in the same culture, the same gun culture or training culture that we're in? What can we do to make training more approachable to you? And what can we do to encourage you to take more training, or to, I don't know what I want to say here. It's been a long day, sorry. But what can instructors do to be more approachable, and to encourage you to take the next step in training?
For me, it's marketing. It's all about marketing and how you wrap up that present. So if you wrap it up in combat gear and camo and, wannabe kind of guy, who's just looking for a fight, then I'm not interested. If you wrap it up in, make it a game, make it fun, make it a, not that having a gun is a game, but make it more of a sport, I guess is the word I'm saying. That if you make it more of an entertaining, here's a hobby, and hey, while you're learning this hobby, you might actually learn something about defending yourself as well. So for me, it's just the approach. I think because I am an introvert in the worst way, having the class in my home was a deciding factor. That if I had to go to a place with strangers and people I don't know, in a situation, where I'm not going to be comfortable, I would probably say no. But because it's in my home and because I'm able to host it, that would be an advantage for me to have additional classes. Now, I don't have a rifle range in the backyard, and I don't have anything
we can
like
work
that.
on that. We can work on that.
We can work on that.
We'll come down. We'll get that sorted out.
But I do think making it accessible to women is to allow them to be a part of hosting and allow them to be a part of the curriculum. What do people who aren't looking at defense, what else could we discuss? We could discuss accuracy. We could discuss false memories. We could discuss the how well we can rely on our recall of certain memories under stressful situations. What are some pneumatic tricks that we could use in stressful situations to remember, the color of the hair, car, that sort of thing.
So, David, before you go, I just want to say that everything you just said is what is focused on in the majority of the force on force classes I've done.
With
it
the
is
exception
not,
of being hosted in your home.
Well, yes, that makes it. I mean, unless you don't mind us repainting your house with blue and red paint in tiny splotches that put holes in drywall, but really, all those things are what good force on force is tailored to. Is realistic scenarios, not necessarily shooting scenarios. They're decision making. They are internal reflection right? So every person is going to come out of a situation differently depending on the decisions that they make leading up to it. And it really makes those type of classes enjoyable. So I think it might be a really enjoyable experience for you going forward.
Well, here's an idea too, Heath, if you don't mind me butting in, because I'm just
No,
going to
not
butt
at
in.
all. I mean, I completely mind. Don't you dare.
So
But I'll mute my mic.
So here's the thought too. And, I would encourage, Kim, I know you fairly well, not, I think I know you pretty well. So I think you would have to be more comfortable handling guns first before taking anything else. But one thing that is an option for anybody who's listening or anybody who's wanting to take the next step into, the observation or the decision-making aspect, here's an idea. You don't have to participate in a force on force class. You can observe a force on force class and not have to spend any money for it. Okay. So, that, and this was again, Gary out there, thank you for the conversation we had earlier. But, I personally, when I take a class, I get just as much, well, probably not just as much, but I get a lot out of observing other students and their decision-making process as I do from my own decision-making process. And I think in the force on force area, it is such a valuable training experience, not only to experience, but more importantly, be able to observe other people's decision-making process. Because in the same way that, we watch videos in class and things like that on actual self-defense scenarios, or we talk about scenarios and what would you do, I think it's equally as important that you observe students and their decision-making process as well. So that is always an option for you, Kim. If David wants to take a force on force class and get into that, come along and observe. And here's the other part. If you have to travel a little bit for it, it's a weekend getaway. Like my wife says, the way I bribed her into taking classes was, hey babe, why don't you come along? Guess what? We're going to get a hotel and there's not going to be any kids involved. Okay. So we get a hotel to ourselves and no kids for an entire weekend. Nobody, saying, mom, where's this? Mom, where's this? Mom, feed us. You can sit in a hot tub.
To add to that, earlier you guys brought up A Christmas Story. So I got my wife to come to a force on force class with me, and she was like, I don't know. And she participated as a role player. So she helped in the class, and it was at Alliance in Ohio. So I said, well, I tell you what, the Christmas, my wife absolutely loves the Christmas Story movie. So, and she's always wanted to go to see the house. It's a museum, all that stuff. And so I said, it's in Cleveland. It's not that far from Alliance. So we allotted for an extra day and we left from Alliance after the class and we went out to the Christmas Story house and we did all the tour that was involved with that actually this past year. And it was a lot of fun. But like Kevin said, it was a weekend away from the kids and it was an enjoyable experience. And my wife's come with for a handful of classes that she did not participate in. She just wanted to watch and kind of like be able to spend time with me while I was out doing stuff that I enjoyed doing. And she found that she likes it and she's better than me at it. So, there's that too.
So I'm going to move to kind of wrap things up, but anything else that you guys, wanted to talk about that we didn't talk about, or something else that came up as we're going through this that you want to address or talk about?
I think we've covered.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Speak
that's
now or forever
amazing.
hold your peace.
Right.
Yeah, I just appreciate you giving us the opportunity to come on and talk about it. And, you know, I'm full of opinions. I'll give them to anybody who'll listen long enough. So thanks.
I love opinions. I love
Me
I
too.
love people who say what they mean and mean what they say. That those are my favorite people. I may not agree with them all the time, but I love people who actually tell me what they think and feel. And so I've always appreciated that about you guys, and you know, certainly appreciate you guys coming on the show. And you know, who would have thought that you would be on a firearms training
Right.
podcast with us from where we were. But anything else to add, Heath or Kim or David or anybody
Nope.
before I move to wrap things up?
My daddy will be so proud.
Did you ever show him your target?
I did.
And what do you think of that?
He was not impressed. He was not
What?
impressed.
He wasn't
Oh
impressed.
man.
Mm-mm.
Well,
No.
dads are hard to please.
Yes, they are. Yes,
You
they are.
know,
Man, I was impressed. David,
Aw.
were you impressed?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I noticed at one point you looked over to the other guys and was like, "Hey, that's my wife."
That's right.
high fives.
Well, thank you guys for coming on the show. You know, I think we had some really good topics here to talk about. I hope people get some insight from it, not only beginner students themselves, but also instructors on how to approach you guys, approach beginning students or people who are just starting their martial path. You know, and the offer's always out there. If you guys, you know, I obviously love to shoot and love to go to the range. I think you guys are great. And if there's ever anything that you have questions on or you want to hit the range again, you know, let me know. I'm always looking for an excuse to go out to the range. And,
Right.
you know, somebody told me one time that, this is probably mildly inappropriate, but I'll go ahead and say it anyway, because it's funny that going to the range is a lot like sex. It's better if there's somebody else there. Okay. So, you know, it's always better to take friends. And I think one of the reasons that attracted you to training in the first place is the fact that you knew me. You know, you were comfortable with me. You knew I wasn't, you know, a drill instructor type or anything like that, there was already a personal connection. So, you know, anybody who's been to any training or anybody who goes to the range is a de facto ambassador for the Second Amendment. And the more times we can take people out to the range and introduce people to the sport or to the practical application of firearms for self-defense, I think that's a good thing. So, yeah, take a friend, take many friends. I'm trying to look for my script here on ending the show. Anything else, anybody, before I wrap things up?
Oh man, no, I really appreciate the time. Yeah, it's even good just to, you know, talk through it again. So, yeah, really, yeah, you know, I think I said it earlier. You know, the sport, I mean, it's really not a sport, right? But the, you know, the passion around guns, and you know, there's more to learn, and you know, better at in improving your skill range, right? That's a big deal for me. I'm kind of a social guy, right? I enjoy the more fellowship you have around it, the more fun it is, you know. So I think as long as you can always kind of, for me, that's what draws me to it, right? It's a group of, you know, good people and you learn together and you participate together, and you know, and everybody's happy. That makes it even more fun. So that's a big piece of it.
Yeah.
So
This is, go ahead,
Kevin, looking at the show notes you had, the last thing I saw was, so what do you guys feel about people like Kevin and myself taking the level of training that we do? And do you find that intimidating or odd?
Neither intimidating nor odd. You do you. If you enjoy taking those classes, buddy, I will support you all day long. Go take those classes. I would like to have, you know, you guys in a situation where there is an active shooter. We need more men to take classes and women to take classes. especially, again, not to ramp up and not to be political, but especially with the climate in our police force is up against today. I think more citizens being responsibly armed is a really good alternative.
Very, very well said. I couldn't agree more. And that's why I work as hard in the training that I do is, I may not be there, but, if my daughter's at the grocery store, that she walked up, I would hope that one of my students was there if something were to go wrong and vice versa. But,
Yep.
it's all about the decision-making process and making responsibly armed citizens. Armed citizens are a liability. Responsibly armed citizens are an asset. So thank you guys again for coming on and for sharing your thoughts. And again, I do want to thank you guys, our amazing Patreon supporters, and of course our show sponsors, Filster Holsters, Defense Mechanisms, Big Tex Outdoors, Defensive Elements, Phoenix Ammo, and Cloud Defensive. But as always, guys and gals, we thank you for tuning in and listening to us
As we
greatly appreciate it. And we'll catch you on the next episode of Practically Tactical.